Claire, tell everyone why I almost left your mother.
Gladly, Dad. But first, let's show them the secret letter you hid for 22 years.
What letter?
The one that proves you lied.
At my parents' 35th anniversary dinner, my father called me onto the stage in front of 200 guests. I thought he was finally going to thank me for planning the entire celebration. Instead, he raised his glass, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "Our daughter is the reason I almost left her mother." The room went silent, but what my father did not know was that I had already found the letter he had spent 22 years trying to hide. Hello. My name is Claire Bennett. I am 34 years old, and until that night, I believed loyalty could earn love from people who had decided long ago to make you their scapegoat. I was wrong. My parents, Richard and Elaine Bennett, lived outside Columbus. To everyone else, they were the perfect American couple. Dad owned Bennett Custom Homes, a successful construction company. Mom volunteered at church, chaired charity drives, and remembered every birthday in our neighborhood. They had matching smiles in every photograph. Behind closed doors, their marriage was held together by silence, blame, and one family rule: never embarrass Richard Bennett. I learned that rule when I was 12. That year, Dad disappeared for 3 days after an argument with Mom. When he returned, he acted as if nothing had happened. Mom cooked his favorite dinner. My younger brother, Evan, talked about baseball. I asked where Dad had been. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Mom looked at me with fear, not anger. "Your father needed space," she said. That was the first time I understood that truth was dangerous in our house. Over the years, Dad began telling a strange story whenever he wanted sympathy. He said his marriage had nearly collapsed because I had been a difficult teenager. According to him, my attitude, my questions, and my constant drama had pushed him to the edge. The story made no sense. I worked weekends at a grocery store. I never drank, never ran away, and never got arrested. My greatest act of rebellion was applying to a college in Chicago instead of staying near home. Still, if Dad repeated a lie often enough, Mom stopped correcting him, even learned to agree. Relatives nodded as though they remembered events that had never happened, and I learned to work twice as hard for half as much affection. That was why, when Mom asked me to organize their 35th anniversary celebration, I said yes. She called me 6 months before the event. "Your father wants something elegant," she said, "something people will remember." I should have refused. I had a demanding job as an event coordinator for a medical foundation, and I was already working 50 hours a week. But Mom sounded tired. She had recently recovered from surgery, and I wanted to give her one peaceful night. So I booked the Grand Hawthorne Ballroom, hired a jazz quartet, designed gold and ivory invitations, arranged hotel rooms, collected photographs, and contacted friends from every chapter of their lives. Dad contributed opinions, not effort. The flowers were too pale, the salmon was too ordinary. The band needed a pianist. The guest list had to include city officials, former clients, and anyone who might be useful to his business. Each time he criticized me, Mom whispered, "Please, Claire, just let him have this." So I did. 3 weeks before the dinner, I visited their house to collect old photographs for a slideshow. Mom was at a doctor's appointment. Dad was meeting a contractor. I went upstairs to the hall closet, where Mom stored albums in a cedar chest. Under the albums, I found a small metal box. It was not locked. Inside were bank statements, a faded motel receipt from 2004, and an envelope with my mother's name written across the front. The handwriting belonged to a woman named Rebecca Cole. I knew that name. Rebecca had worked as Dad's office manager when I was a child. She vanished from the company without warning when I was 12. The same year Dad disappeared for 3 days. My hands began to shake as I opened the letter. Rebecca wrote that she was tired of waiting. Dad had promised to leave Mom, move to Arizona, and begin a new life with her. She mentioned an apartment deposit, secret transfers from the company, and a private bank account. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "You said Claire discovered us, but you promised a child could not stop our future." I read it 3 times. The memory returned slowly. When I was 12, I had gone to Dad's office after school because Mom was sick. I saw him kissing Rebecca in the parking garage. Dad spotted me. He followed me home and told Mom I was upset because he had refused to buy me a laptop. That evening, my parents had the worst argument I had ever heard. For 22 years, I had believed I caused that fight by speaking at the wrong time. Now I understood I had not damaged their marriage. I had exposed the person who did. I photographed every page and put the originals back exactly where I found them. I wanted to confront Dad immediately, but one detail stopped me. The bank statements showed transfers from Bennett Custom Homes into an account labeled RCB Consulting. The initials matched Richard Bennett and Rebecca Cole. The transfers had continued long after Rebecca supposedly left Ohio. This was no longer only about an affair. I called my cousin Daniel, a forensic accountant in Indianapolis. I did not tell him whose records I had. I sent him copies and asked whether the pattern looked normal. He called me the next morning. "Claire, this looks like someone was hiding company money," he said. "Maybe income, maybe assets. You need more records before making accusations." That advice led me to my father's company office on a Saturday. I still had a key because Dad had asked me to help prepare the lobby for the firm's 40th anniversary. I told myself I was looking for the truth, not revenge. But as I stood in the dark office, I knew the truth and revenge were beginning to look like the same road. I found old corporate ledgers in a storage room. RCB Consulting had received hundreds of thousands of dollars over 18 years for design services. No designs were attached. No contracts existed. Then I found something worse. My mother owned 40% of Bennett Custom Homes. After her surgery, Dad had prepared documents transferring most of her shares to him. Her signature was on the final page, but it looked uneven. The notary date placed Mom in Ohio on a day I knew she had been recovering at my home in Chicago. I had hospital discharge records and photographs to prove it. I copied the documents and left. On Monday, Dad called me. "Were you in my office this weekend?" My heart slammed against my ribs. "Why?" I asked. A storage cabinet was not closed properly. I forced myself to breathe. I dropped off the anniversary seating chart at reception. I didn't go into storage. He was silent for a long moment. "Good," he finally said. "Some family matters are not your business." That sentence confirmed he had something to hide. The next week, Mom came to my apartment while she was visiting Chicago. I showed her Rebecca's letter. She did not look surprised. She sat at my kitchen table, folded her hands, and said, "I knew about the affair. Did you know he blamed me?" Her eyes filled with tears. "He said you forced the truth into the open before he was ready." I stared at her. "I was 12. I know. And you let him tell everyone I nearly destroyed your marriage." Mom began to cry, but for once, her tears did not move me. She explained that Dad had threatened to leave with all the money. She had never handled the family finances. She feared losing the house, the company, and Evan's future. So when Dad offered to stay, she agreed to protect his reputation. The price of that agreement was me. Then I showed her the share transfer documents. Her sadness became confusion. "I never signed these," she whispered. That was the moment Mom finally stopped defending him. We met with an attorney named Monica Hayes. She confirmed that if the signature and notarization were fraudulent, Dad could face serious civil and criminal consequences. She also advised Mom not to confront him until we secured the real company records. Mom agreed to cooperate, but fear had shaped her for 35 years. 2 days later, she called me in a panic. "Maybe we should cancel everything," she said. "The investigation, the dinner, all of it. Your father says he plans to make an important announcement at the anniversary." I felt cold. Dad had learned enough to know that Mom was pulling away. The celebration was no longer a party. It was his stage, his audience, and his chance to control the story before we could tell the truth. I asked Mom one question. "Do you want to spend the rest of your life being afraid of him?" She was quiet. Then she said, "No, we did not cancel the dinner. We changed the program." Monica helped Mom secure copies of corporate tax returns and account records. Daniel traced more than $600,000 to RCB Consulting. The company was registered to Rebecca Cole in Scottsdale, Arizona. Rebecca was still alive, and she was willing to talk. I called her from Monica's office. At first, She denied everything. Then Monica explained that the transfers could become part of a fraud case. Rebecca's voice changed. She admitted Dad had promised to divorce Mom in 2004. When he changed his mind, he offered to support Rebecca through fake consulting payments if she remained silent. She claimed he had recently contacted her again, saying he might finally move to Arizona after selling the company. He was planning to sell the business, take the hidden money, and leave Mom with almost nothing. The anniversary dinner was 4 days away. On the afternoon of the event, Dad arrived at the Grand Hawthorne wearing a black tuxedo and the smile he used for clients. He walked through the ballroom as if inspecting a property he owned. "You did better than I expected," he told me. It was the closest thing to a compliment he had given me in years. Mom arrived in a midnight blue gown. She looked nervous, but she also looked different, like someone had opened a locked door inside her. "Are you ready?" I asked. She squeezed my hand. "I should have protected you 22 years ago. Let me protect you tonight." By 7 o'clock, 200 guests filled the ballroom. Business partners, relatives, neighbors, church friends, and city leaders sat beneath crystal chandeliers. The jazz quartet played their wedding song. A slideshow showed 35 years of carefully edited happiness. For the first hour, everything went according to plan. Then Dad took the microphone. He thanked the guests. He praised loyalty, sacrifice, and the sacred promise of marriage. Every word tasted bitter because I knew how much deception stood behind it. Finally, he looked toward my table. He said, "Come join us on stage." People applauded. I stood and walked forward. Dad placed one hand on my shoulder. To the audience, it probably looked affectionate. His fingers pressed hard enough to hurt. "Our daughter planned this beautiful evening," he began. I heard Mom inhale beside him. "But a true family does not survive on beautiful evenings alone. It survives trials." 22 years ago, Claire became so angry, rebellious, and determined to divide us that I nearly walked out on Elaine. The applause died. Dad continued. "She has always needed attention. Even now, she asks questions about private business that does not concern her. But Elaine and I chose forgiveness. Tonight, I hope Claire finally learns what loyalty means." 200 people stared at me. My Aunt Susan lowered her eyes. Evan looked confused. Several of Dad's employees shifted in their chairs. For one terrible second, I was 12 years old again, frightened, ashamed, and wondering whether telling the truth had made me bad. Then Mom stepped forward. "That is not what happened," she said. Dad's smile froze. Mom took the microphone from his hand. "Claire did not nearly destroy our marriage. Richard did." A murmur rolled across the room. Dad reached for the microphone. I moved between them. "Elaine is emotional," he said loudly. "She has been under stress." That was his favorite weapon, make the woman sound unstable, then present himself as calm. But I had planned the event. I controlled the screens, the speakers, and the program. I nodded to the technician. The anniversary slideshow disappeared. Rebecca's 2004 letter appeared on the 20-foot screen behind us. The key lines were enlarged so every guest could read them. Dad's face lost its color. I took the second microphone. "When I was 12, I saw my father with another woman," I said. "He told my mother I was lying. When she learned the truth, he blamed me for exposing him. For 22 years, my parents protected their marriage by sacrificing my reputation." Dad turned toward the technician. "Shut this off." The next slide appeared records of the payments to RCB Consulting. Then came the false share transfer document. Then a timeline showing Mom had been in Chicago on the day her signature was supposedly notarized in Ohio. The ballroom erupted in whispers. One of Dad's business partners stood. "What is this?" Dad pointed at me. "She stole confidential records. She has been trying to ruin me for years." I had expected that. "No," I said. "You taught me to document everything." Monica rose from a table near the front and identified herself as Mom's attorney. She announced that the questionable transfers and forged documents had been delivered to the appropriate financial investigators that afternoon. Dad stared at Mom. Mom's voice trembled, but she did not look away. "I stopped you." Then Evan walked onto the stage. For most of our lives, my brother had accepted Dad's version of everything. He was the favorite child, the future company president, and the son who never asked difficult questions. That night, Dad called me yesterday, even said he asked me to sign papers supporting the company's sale. He said Mom had agreed. Dad's expression changed. He had not expected Evan to turn against him. "You promised me the Arizona property." Evan continued. "You said Claire would get nothing because she betrayed the family." The room became completely silent. That was the final crack in Dad's perfect image. He grabbed the microphone again and shouted that the celebration was over. But the ballroom staff did not take orders from him. They took orders from me. I asked the guests to remain seated for one final announcement. Mom faced the audience. "After 35 years, I am filing for divorce," she said, "and Bennett Custom Homes will not be sold without a full accounting of its finances." Some guests gasped, others applauded. Dad looked smaller beneath the ballroom lights. He had built his power by controlling what people knew. Now, surrounded by everyone whose respect mattered to him, he had nowhere to hide. He leaned close to me. "You planned this," he whispered. I met his eyes. "No, Dad. You planned it 22 years ago. I just arranged the room." He walked off the stage alone. The consequences came quickly. The company's sale was suspended. Dad's partners voted to remove him from daily control, while an independent audit began. Investigators confirmed years of improper payments and discovered that the false share transfer was not the only questionable document. Rebecca cooperated in exchange for resolving her own legal exposure. Her testimony proved Dad had used company money to hide personal assets. Dad avoided prison after reaching a plea agreement, repaying a large portion of the money and accepting probation. But he lost the company, his position on 2 charity boards, and the public admiration he valued more than his family. Mom received her rightful share of the business and the marital property. She sold most of her interest to Dad's partners, bought a smaller home near my apartment, and began therapy. Our relationship did not heal overnight. One afternoon, she apologized without excuses. "I was afraid of losing my marriage," she said. "So I let you lose your childhood." That was the first apology I believed. I told her forgiveness would be a road, not a gift I could hand her in one afternoon. She understood. Evan apologized too. He admitted that being favored had made it easy not to see what was happening to me. We are rebuilding our relationship slowly, with honesty instead of family myths. Dad sent me one letter 6 months after the dinner. He said I had humiliated him and destroyed everything he spent his life building. I did not answer. I framed only one piece from that anniversary, the final printed program. On the cover, beneath my parents' names, were the words, 35 years of love, loyalty, and truth. Love had been complicated. Loyalty had been demanded from the wrong people. But truth had finally arrived. People sometimes ask whether exposing my father in front of 200 guests was revenge. Maybe part of it was. But revenge was not watching him lose his reputation. It was refusing to carry his shame for one more day. It was seeing my mother choose courage. It was hearing my brother finally question the man he had worshipped. It was standing on the same stage where Dad tried to reduce me to a family problem and telling the truth in my own voice. My father called me into the spotlight because he believed I would stand there quietly and accept the blame. Instead, I turned on the screen. And that was the night I learned the most satisfying revenge is not destroying the person who lied about you. It is giving the truth a microphone and letting the liar hear the applause when you finally set yourself free.